My wife posted "Know Your Worth" on Instagram and let friends judge our marriage. I quietly removed my support system until her faced real worth. Closer together, but sometimes it shows you exactly how far apart you really are. That's what happened when my wife decided to announce to the world that she finally knew her worth and wouldn't accept less than she deserved. The kicker, she posted it right after I'd spent my entire weekend fixing our kitchen sink, painting the guest bedroom, and handling 3 loads of laundry while she had her girls' day out. I was sitting in my home office catching up on some work emails when my phone buzzed, a notification from her Instagram. Usually, I don't pay much attention to her social media posts, but something about the timing felt off. I opened it and there it was, a perfectly filtered selfie of her looking contemplative with that caption that hit like a sledgehammer. "Now I know my worth, queens. Won't accept less than I deserve. Time to level up and demand better." The post already had dozens of likes and comments from her friends, all cheering her on with those typical phrases. "Yes, girl. You deserve the world. Know your value, queen." I scrolled through them, each one feeling like a small stab. What really got me was how she'd never mentioned being unhappy. We'd had dinner together just 2 hours before she posted this, and she seemed perfectly content. I walked downstairs to where she was curled up on the couch, still scrolling through her phone with that satisfied smile people get when their posts are performing well. She didn't even look up when I entered the room. "Interesting post," I said, keeping my tone neutral. She glanced up briefly, then back to her screen. "Oh, you saw that? It's just something I've been thinking about lately." "Thinking about what, exactly?" She shrugged, still not giving me her full attention. "Just personal growth stuff, self-worth. You know how it is." But I didn't know how it was. We've been married for 6 years, and this was the first I was hearing about her feeling undervalued or unappreciated. I sat down across from her, studying her face. She was still smiling at her phone, responding to comments with heart emojis and thank you messages. "So, this is about us?" I asked directly. That got her attention. She looked up with that expression people wear when they've been caught but wanted to play innocent. "Why would you think it's about us? It's just a general post about self-improvement, right? And the timing is just coincidental." She set her phone down with a slight huff. "Look, if you're feeling some type of way about my post, maybe that says more about you than it does about me." There it was. The deflection, the subtle accusation that I was being insecure or reading too much into things. But I'd been with her long enough to know when she was being genuine and when she was playing games. This felt like the latter. "I'm just trying to understand what brought this on," I said. "If there's something I'm not doing right or something you need that you're not getting, I'd rather you talk to me about it instead of broadcasting it to social media." She picked up her phone again, clearly done with the conversation. "It's not that deep. I just felt inspired to share something positive." "Positive," I repeated the word, letting it hang in the air. "So, telling the world you won't accept less than you deserve is positive." "Yes, it is. It's about self-respect and boundaries. And what exactly are you not getting that you deserve?" She gave me that look wives give their husbands when they think they're being deliberately obtuse. I shouldn't have to explain this to you. But see, that's where she miscalculated. I'm not the type of man who accepts vague accusations or passive-aggressive social media posts as legitimate communication. If she had something to say about our relationship, she could say it directly. If she felt undervalued, she could specify how. But this whole performance for her online audience had crossed a line. I stood up and headed back toward my office. "Well, when you figure out what you think you deserve that you're not getting, let me know. I'd hate for you to keep settling for less." She called after me. "Where are you going?" "To give you some space to think about your worth," I replied without turning around. Back in my office, I sat down and really looked at that post again. The comments were still flowing in, and I noticed something interesting. Her friend Rebecca had written, "Girl, it's about time. You've been giving too much for too little." Another friend added, "Some people don't appreciate what they have until it's gone." These weren't random supportive comments. They were targeted. They knew exactly what situation she was referencing, which meant she'd been discussing our relationship with them. She'd been building a case, gathering sympathy, and now she was making it public. I leaned back in my chair and considered my options. I could get angry and start an argument. I could demand she take the post down. I could write my own passive-aggressive comment. But none of those approaches would actually solve anything. They'd just give her more ammunition to use against me. No, this required a different strategy. If she wanted to know her worth, I was more than happy to show her. If she thought she deserved better than what she was getting, I could demonstrate exactly what she was getting and what life would look like without it. My phone buzzed again. Another comment on her post. "You're too good for anyone who doesn't see your value." I smiled to myself. Perfect. Let's see how valuable she really thinks she is when she finds out what she's actually worth in this relationship. Time to give her exactly what she's asking for. The next morning, I woke up to find her post had exploded overnight. Over 200 likes and 50 comments. I made my coffee and decided to really dig into what her support network was telling her. What I found was more revealing than I expected. Her college friend Amanda had written a lengthy comment. "Honey, you've been carrying that household for years. Time to step back and let him figure out what he's losing." Rebecca chimed in again. "Remember what we talked about at brunch last week? Actions speak louder than words, and his actions show he takes you for granted." Brunch last week. That explained a lot. While I was home cleaning the garage and fixing the fence gate, she was apparently having a therapy session about our marriage with her friends. And based on these comments, I wasn't painted in a very flattering light. But the comment that really caught my attention was from her sister. "You know, I love you both, but you do way more than your fair share. Maybe it's time he realized how much you actually handle." Her sister, the same sister who comes to our house for every holiday, whose kids I've helped with homework countless times, whose husband I've assisted with job interviews and car troubles. Even she was part of this little intervention. I scrolled further and found gems like, "Girl, stop being his mother and be his wife, and a real man would appreciate what he has." One particularly interesting comment came from her coworker. "You inspire me every day at work. Don't let anyone dim your shine at home." So, this wasn't just her friends enabling her. This was a full-scale campaign. She'd been painting me as some kind of ungrateful husband who didn't appreciate her contributions. The irony was thick enough to cut with a knife. I heard her footsteps on the stairs and quickly switched to checking my work emails. She walked into the kitchen wearing her yoga outfit, already scrolling through her phone with that same satisfied expression from last night. "Morning," she said without looking up. "Morning. Looks like your post really resonated with people." She glanced at me, trying to gauge my tone. "Yeah, it's nice to know other women understand the importance of self-worth." "Absolutely." "Your friend Amanda seems particularly invested in your happiness." That got her attention. She looked up fully now. "You were reading my comments." They're public comments on a public post, but yes, I found Amanda's perspective quite interesting, especially the part about me taking you for granted. She set her phone down on the counter, suddenly looking less confident. "Look, my friends care about me. Sometimes they get a little protective." "Protective of what exactly? What threat am I posing to your well-being?" She opened the refrigerator and started pulling out ingredients for her protein smoothie, clearly buying time to formulate her response. "It's not about threats. It's about making sure I don't settle for less than I deserve in any area of my life. And you feel like you're settling with me?" She turned on the blender, drowning out any chance for me to hear her answer. When it stopped, she said, "I think we both could do better at appreciating each other." Interesting way to put it, but your post wasn't about both of us doing better. It was about you not accepting less than you deserve. She poured her smoothie into a travel cup and grabbed her gym bag. "I'm going to be late for my class." "Of course you are." She paused at the door. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing, just noting the timing. Seems to be a pattern lately." After she left, I went back to her post. The comments were still coming in, and I noticed something else. Not a single person had asked what specifically was wrong or suggested she try communicating with me. Every single comment was encouraging her to demand more, expect better, and refuse to settle. But here's what really got me. I started mentally cataloging what I actually do around the house, in our relationship, and for her personally. The list was longer than I expected. I handle all the finances, including her credit card bills that she never questions. I maintain the house, the cars, and deal with any repairs or issues. I plan our vacations, make our dinner reservations, and remember birthdays for both sides of the family. When she wanted to start her online boutique 2 years ago, who researched suppliers and helped set up her website. When her mother was in the hospital last year, who took time off work to drive her back and forth for visits. When she decided she needed a home office space, who converted the spare room and painted it the exact shade of pink she wanted. I pulled out my phone and started going through my calendar and bank statements. In the past month alone, I'd handled the car registration renewal she forgot about, fixed the garbage disposal that stopped working, arranged for the HVAC maintenance she'd been complaining about, and covered the cost of her girl's weekend trip to the wine country. But apparently, according to her inner circle, I was the one not pulling my weight. Her friend Rebecca had commented again, "Sometimes we have to show people our value by withdrawing it for a while. They don't appreciate what they have until it's gone." I stared at that comment for a long moment. Rebecca was giving her advice that could potentially end our marriage, and she was treating it like some kind of empowerment strategy. The audacity was almost impressive. My phone buzzed with a text from her. "Staying after yoga for coffee with the girls. Don't wait up for lunch." Of course she was. No doubt this would be another session where they'd analyze her post, celebrate her newfound courage, and probably brainstorm what other ways she could assert her worth. I looked around our house, the house where she pays for exactly 0 of the monthly expenses. The house where she has her own car in the driveway that I maintain and insure. The house where she has complete freedom to spend her days however she wants because I handle everything that actually keeps our life running. She wanted to know her worth. She wanted to see what she deserved. Perfect. I was about to give her a very practical education in value and contribution, starting with a detailed breakdown of exactly what she was getting versus what she was giving. Rebecca was right about one thing. Sometimes people don't appreciate what they have until it's gone. Time to test that theory. She came home around 3 o'clock in the afternoon, practically glowing with whatever validation she'd received from her coffee session. I was in the living room, having spent the day doing some very interesting research and calculations. "Hey," she said, setting down her purse and keys. "How was your day?" "Productive. Very productive, actually." "I've been thinking about what you said last night." She looked surprised. "Really?" "Absolutely. Your post got me reflecting on worth and what people deserve in relationships. I realized you're right about one thing. We should both be getting what we deserve." She sat down across from me, suddenly looking more interested in this conversation than she had in weeks. "I'm glad you're open to talking about this." "More than open. I'm ready to have a completely honest discussion about expectations and contributions. Since you've clearly been thinking about what you deserve, I'd love to hear specifics." She shifted uncomfortably. "Specifics?" "Yes. You posted about not accepting less than you deserve, which implies you feel you're currently getting less. So tell me, what exactly do you think you deserve that you're not getting?" She was quiet for a moment, probably trying to remember the talking points from her coffee session. "Well, I think I deserve to feel appreciated and valued." "Okay. And how would that look practically? What would make you feel more appreciated?" "I don't know. Maybe you could acknowledge more of what I do around here." I nodded thoughtfully. "That's fair. What specifically do you do around here that you feel goes unacknowledged?" Another pause. "I keep the house clean. I do the shopping. I manage our social calendar." "Right. And what about the mortgage payments? Do you handle those?" "No. But the car payments, insurance, utilities, I don't. But that's not the point. What about home maintenance? When the roof leaked last month, who arranged for the repair?" She was getting frustrated now. "Why are you making this about money and chores?" "Because you're talking about worth and what you deserve. I'm just trying to understand how you're calculating your value versus what you receive." She stood up and started pacing. "It's not about keeping score. It's about feeling respected and prioritized." "I agree completely." "So, when I spent last weekend fixing the sink and painting the bedroom, how did that make you feel?" "That's different." "How so?" Because those are just things that need to be done." I leaned back and smiled. "Exactly. Things that need to be done, like earning the money that pays for this house, the cars, the groceries, your gym membership, your girls' trips. Now you're being ridiculous." "Am I?" "Your friend Rebecca commented that you've been giving too much for too little. I'm just curious what too much looks like from your perspective." She stopped pacing and faced me directly. "Fine. You want specifics? I think I deserve a husband who doesn't make me feel like I have to justify wanting to be valued. I deserve someone who takes initiative without being asked. I deserve to feel like a priority, not an afterthought." "Interesting. And what are you willing to contribute to get those things?" "What do you mean?" "Well, relationships are exchanges, right? You deserve certain things, but what does the other person deserve in return? What would you be willing to give to get what you want?" She looked at me like I'd asked her to solve calculus. I shouldn't have to negotiate for basic respect. You're absolutely right. Basic respect should be automatic. But we're not talking about basic respect anymore, are we? We're talking about you knowing your worth and not accepting less than you deserve. That suggests you want more than basic respect. I want a partner, not a roommate. Perfect. Let's explore that. What does partnership look like to you? Equal contribution, shared responsibility, mutual support. I pulled out my phone and opened the Notes app where I'd been tracking things. Great. So equal contribution would mean you'd want to split the mortgage 50-50. That's not what I meant. Shared responsibility would include you handling your own car maintenance and insurance. You're being deliberately obtuse. Mutual support would mean when I'm working late to earn the money that funds our lifestyle, you'd handle dinner without making it seem like a huge favor. She sat back down, looking deflated. Why are you turning this into an attack? I'm not attacking you. I'm responding to your post about knowing your worth and not accepting less than you deserve. I think it's a great philosophy, and I'd like to apply it to both of us. What does that mean? It means if you deserve to feel valued and prioritized, then I deserve to have my contributions acknowledged rather than dismissed. If you deserve a partner who takes initiative, then I deserve a partner who doesn't broadcast our relationship issues to social media instead of talking to me directly. She was quiet now, staring at her hands. I continued, if you deserve someone who makes you feel special, then I deserve someone who doesn't let her friends trash talk me in public comment sections. They weren't trash talking you. Rebecca said you've been giving too much for too little. Amanda said I take you for granted. Your sister said you do more than your fair share. What would you call that? They're just being supportive. By encouraging you to devalue your marriage. By validating complaints you never brought to me first. She looked up, and for the first time in this conversation, she looked uncertain. I didn't think of it that way. Here's what I think happened. You had some feelings about our relationship. Instead of talking to me, you talked to your friends. They validated those feelings and amplified them. Then you posted about it publicly. Now you feel justified in your position, but you never actually tried to resolve anything with me. That's not, I didn't plan it like that. Intent doesn't matter. Impact does. And the impact is that you've created a situation where I'm expected to prove my worth to you, while you get to define what you deserve without any reciprocal examination. She was quiet for a long moment. So, what are you saying? I'm saying your post inspired me. I want to know my worth too. I want to make sure I'm not accepting less than I deserve either. And what do you think you deserve? I smiled. I deserve exactly what you deserve. Appreciation, respect, acknowledgement, and a partner who doesn't air our business on social media. The question is, are you prepared to give me what I deserve while you're demanding what you think you deserve? The room was silent except for the ticking of our clock. She was processing, probably realizing that her empowerment moment had just become a negotiation where she wasn't the only one setting terms. I need to think about this, she said finally. Take all the time you need. But while you're thinking, I'll be demonstrating exactly what you've been getting versus what you've been giving. You wanted to know your worth. Perfect. Let's find out what we're both really worth. The next morning, I started my education program. Not with drama or announcements, just with simple, practical demonstrations of value. I got up at my usual time and made coffee, 1 cup. When she came downstairs expecting her usual morning latte that I'd been making for 6 years, she found me reading the news with my single cup of coffee. No coffee for me? She asked, looking confused. Oh, I figured since you're focusing on not accepting less than you deserve, you'd want to handle your own coffee preferences. I wouldn't want to assume what you think you deserve. She stared at me for a moment, then went to make her own coffee. The machine took her 3 tries to get right because she'd never actually learned how to use the espresso function. While she struggled with the coffee maker, I gathered my work things and headed toward the door. Where are you going? She asked. Work, same as always. But what about breakfast? What about it? You usually make breakfast on Wednesdays. I paused at the door. I usually do a lot of things, but I've been thinking about what your friend said in those comments. Rebecca mentioned you've been giving too much for too little. I wouldn't want to burden you with too much by expecting breakfast. That's not what she meant, isn't it? Well, either way, I'm sure you can handle it. You're a strong, independent woman who knows her worth, right? I left her standing in the kitchen, still trying to figure out the coffee maker. At work, I made some phone calls. First, I canceled the weekly grocery delivery service that I'd been paying for. Then, I called the housekeeper and canceled our bi-weekly cleaning service. Next, I contacted our landscaping company and put the service on hold. When I got home that evening, she was in the living room looking frustrated. The kitchen counter was covered with coffee grounds and water spots from her morning battle with the espresso machine. "How was your day?" I asked pleasantly. "Fine, busy. I had to go grocery shopping." "That's great, very self-sufficient of you." She waited for me to ask about dinner, but I didn't. Instead, I went to my office and ordered takeout for myself. When the delivery arrived, I took my food to my office and ate while working. Around 8 o'clock, she knocked on my door. "Aren't you going to eat with me?" "I already ate, but thanks for thinking of me. You ordered food without asking if I wanted anything. I figured you'd handle your own dinner. You're very capable." "This is ridiculous. You're acting like a child." I looked up from my computer. "Actually, I'm acting like someone who's learning to value himself appropriately." Your post really resonated with me. I realized I've been giving too much for too little too. What's that supposed to mean? Well, let's see. I've been handling all the finances, all the household maintenance, most of the planning, and the majority of the expenses. In return, I get criticized by your friends and passive-aggressive social media posts. Seems like an unbalanced exchange. So, you're punishing me? Not at all. I'm adjusting my contributions to match the level of appreciation I receive. It's basic economics. She left without saying anything else. Thursday morning followed the same pattern. I made my coffee, gathered my things, and prepared to leave. She was at the kitchen table with a bowl of cereal, looking dejected. "The Wi-Fi isn't working," she said. "That's unfortunate. Aren't you going to fix it?" "I'm sure you can figure it out. Maybe call the internet company." "I don't know how to do that." "It's probably time you learned. Personal growth and all that." That afternoon, she texted me multiple times. The Wi-Fi was still down. The dishwasher was making a weird noise. She couldn't figure out how to pay the electric bill online because she didn't know the account information. I responded to each text with helpful suggestions. Try unplugging the router for 30 seconds. The dishwasher manual is in the kitchen drawer. The electric company's customer service number is on the bill. By Friday, the reality was setting in. She'd spent 2 days trying to manage things that I usually handled seamlessly. Her Instagram post from Tuesday was looking less empowering and more naive with each passing hour. Friday evening, I came home to find her sitting at the kitchen table, with papers spread everywhere. Bills, account statements, instruction manuals. "What's all this?" I asked. "I'm trying to understand our finances and figure out how to fix the garbage disposal and schedule the car maintenance that's apparently overdue. Sounds like you're learning a lot about household management." She looked up at me with exhausted eyes. "This is harder than I thought." "What specifically?" "All of it. I didn't realize how many things you handle." I sat down across from her. "And how does that make you feel?" "Overwhelmed and maybe a little guilty." "Guilty about what?" "About not appreciating it before, about letting my friends influence me, about that post." I nodded. "Your friend Amanda commented that you've been carrying the household for years. How do you feel about that assessment now?" She pushed the papers away and rubbed her temples. "I feel like I was seeing only part of the picture." "What changed your perspective?" "Having to handle everything myself for 3 days. I spent more on groceries in one trip than you usually spend in 2 weeks. I couldn't figure out the router issue and had to pay for a technician. The dishwasher repair is going to cost $300 because I didn't know about the maintenance schedule you've been following. And I realized that maybe my definition of contribution was pretty narrow." I leaned back in my chair. "So, what do you think you deserve now?" She was quiet for a moment. "I think I deserve a husband who cares enough to handle things without making a big deal about it, which is what I had all along. And what do you think I deserve? An apology, and a wife who appreciates what she has instead of listening to people who don't even know our relationship." "Anything else?" She looked at the mess of papers on the table. "Help figuring all this out so I can take over some of these responsibilities. If we're going to be real partners, I should know how our life actually works." I smiled. Now that sounds like someone who knows her true worth. She reached across the table and took my hand. "I'm sorry. The post, the comments, all of it. I was feeling insecure about other things and I took it out on our marriage." "What other things?" "Work stuff. Comparison with other people's relationships. General life anxiety. But instead of talking to you about it, I let my friends convince me that you were the problem. And now, Now I know the problem was my perspective and my choice to broadcast our business instead of communicating with you directly. I squeezed her hand. So, what happens next? Next, I delete that post and apologize to my husband publicly. Then, I learn how to be the partner you actually deserve instead of demanding things I hadn't earned. I like that plan. She picked up her phone and opened Instagram. I watched as she deleted the posts that had started this whole mess. Then she typed a new one. Sometimes growth means admitting when you're wrong. I posted something earlier this week that I regret. My husband is an amazing partner and I'm grateful for everything he does. Real queens appreciate what they have instead of complaining about what they lack. She looked at me before hitting share. Too much? Perfect. Now, let's figure out how to make this partnership more balanced going forward. And that's exactly what we did. Saturday morning brought the real test. Her new post had been up for 12 hours, and the response from her support network was interesting. Rebecca had commented, "Girl, what happened? Did he get to you?" Amanda wrote, "This doesn't sound like you. Are you okay?" Her sister called at 8 a.m., which woke both of us up. "What's going on with your Instagram?" she asked without even saying hello. I could hear her clearly since she was talking loud enough to wake the neighbors. My wife sat up in bed, still groggy.
"What do you mean?"
"That post you made yesterday about your husband being amazing. It's completely different from what you were saying last week." I watched my wife's face as she processed this. Maybe because I realized I was wrong last week. Wrong about what? "You told me he doesn't appreciate you. You said he takes you for granted." I said a lot of things. Doesn't mean they were all accurate. There was a pause on the other end. "Did something happen? Are you in some kind of situation where you can't speak freely?" My wife looked at me and rolled her eyes. "No, I'm not in danger. I'm in my own bed having a conversation with my sister who apparently thinks I can't change my mind about my own marriage. But you were so sure about everything. You said you were done accepting less than you deserve. And I figured out what I actually deserve versus what I thought I deserved." Turns out there's a big difference. After she hung up, she turned to me. "This is going to be a long day." She wasn't wrong. By noon, she'd received texts from 6 different friends, all expressing concern about her sudden change of heart. Her coworker had even called to make sure she wasn't being manipulated or coerced. "It's like they can't believe I might have been wrong," she said, scrolling through the messages. "Or they're invested in you being unhappy with me. Why would they want that?" I shrugged. Misery loves company. Or maybe it's easier to support someone who's complaining than someone who's taking responsibility. Her phone rang again. This time it was Rebecca, and she put it on speaker without asking me. "Okay, I need to know what's really going on," Rebecca said immediately. "Because the woman I talked to on Wednesday was ready to demand better treatment, and now you're posting about how amazing your husband is. That's not normal. What's not normal is posting about my marriage problems instead of addressing them with my husband," my wife replied. "But we talked about this. You said you were tired of being taken for granted." I was. But I was also taking him for granted. I was focused on what I wasn't getting without considering what I wasn't giving. That sounds like something he told you to say. I couldn't help myself. Actually, Rebecca, she came to that conclusion after spending 3 days handling the responsibilities I usually manage. Turns out perspective changes when you actually experience the full picture. There was silence on the other end. "Who is this?" Rebecca asked. "This is the husband you've been encouraging her to undervalue." I wasn't encouraging her to undervalue you. I was encouraging her to value herself by telling her she gives too much for too little. By validating complaints she never brought to me first. How exactly does that help our marriage? Look, I don't know what kind of manipulation. Rebecca, my wife interrupted. Stop. Nobody manipulated me. I spent 3 days trying to manage our household finances, maintenance, and logistics. I realized I had no idea how much my husband actually handles, or how much our lifestyle costs, or how many decisions he makes that I never even think about. So, you're just going to give up on having standards? I'm going to have realistic standards based on actual contribution, rather than imaginary standards based on social media inspiration. Rebecca hung up without saying goodbye. My wife looked at her phone, then at me. Well, that was fun. How do you feel about that conversation? Honestly, embarrassed. Embarrassed that I let her convince me my marriage was lacking when the real problem was my perspective. What made you realize that? She gestured around our bedroom. Wednesday morning when I couldn't figure out the coffee maker. Then when I had no idea how to pay the electric bill. Then when I spent 40 minutes on hold with the internet company trying to explain a problem I didn't understand. By Thursday night, I felt like I was drowning in basic adult responsibilities that you handle so seamlessly. I never even noticed them. And I realized that Rebecca and Amanda don't know anything about our actual relationship. They know the version I presented when I was feeling sorry for myself. They don't know that you wake up early every Saturday to make me pancakes. They don't know that you researched contractors for 3 weeks to find the right person to fix our bathroom. They don't know that you've never once complained about paying for my gym membership or my girls' trips. I nodded. They know the highlight reel of your complaints, not the full picture of our partnership. Exactly. And they were giving me advice based on incomplete information. Her phone buzzed with another text. This one from Amanda. Just checking in. Your husband didn't see our conversation at coffee, did he? My wife showed me the text. What should I tell her? The truth. She typed back. He didn't need to see it. I told him about it myself. That's what married people do. They communicate. Amanda's response came immediately. That seems like a mistake. Some conversations should stay between friends. My wife stared at that text for a long moment. You know what? I'm done with this. She called Amanda directly. Hey, Amanda answered. Did you get my text? I did. And I need to tell you something. The conversation we had at coffee was inappropriate. I was venting about my marriage instead of working on my marriage. You were encouraging me to see problems that weren't really problems. And now you're suggesting I hide conversations from my husband. I was just being supportive. No, you were being destructive. Supportive would be encouraging me to talk to my husband about my feelings. Destructive is validating complaints and encouraging me to broadcast them on social media. I can't believe you're turning this around on me. I'm not turning anything around. I'm taking responsibility for my choices and asking you to respect my marriage going forward. Fine, but don't come crying to me when you realize you settled for less than you deserve. I won't, because I know exactly what I deserve now, and it's what I already have. After she hung up, we sat in silence for a few minutes. How many friendships am I about to lose? She asked. Probably the ones that were based on complaining about me rather than actually caring about your happiness. That's depressing, or liberating. Now you'll know who your real friends are. She leaned round me. The real friends would have asked me if I'd talk to you about my concerns before encouraging me to post about them publicly. Probably. And they would have encouraged me to work on my marriage instead of criticizing my husband. Most likely. She picked up her phone and started typing. What are you doing? Posting one more thing. She showed me the draft update. Real friends encourage you to work on your relationships, not abandon them. Real friends ask if you've communicated with your partner before validating your complaints. Real friends want you to be happy, not just right. Grateful for the friends who actually care about my marriage succeeding. That's going to cause some drama. Good. It's time to find out who my real friends are. She hit post, then turned off her phone. Now what? I asked. We finished what we started yesterday. You're going to teach me how our life actually works, so I can be a real partner, instead of a dependent who complains about not feeling appreciated. Deal. But first, let's make some pancakes. She smiled. I love Saturday morning pancakes. I know. That's why I've been making them for 6 years. And that's why I'm never posting about knowing my worth again, without actually knowing what I'm worth first. 3 weeks later, she got the education she'd asked for. She'd learned to manage our budget and discovered that our monthly expenses were triple what she'd estimated. She'd taken over the landscaping coordination and realized why I'd been so particular about scheduling. She'd handled one car maintenance appointment and understood why I kept detailed service records. But the real lesson came when Rebecca and Amanda organized what they called an intervention dinner. They invited her out, supposedly to celebrate another friend's promotion, but it was clearly an ambush. She came home that night looking exhausted. How was dinner? I asked. Educational. They spent 2 hours trying to convince me that you've brainwashed me into accepting less than I deserve. And what did you tell them? I told them exactly what I deserve and exactly what I'm getting. She sat down next to me and pulled out her phone. Actually, I recorded part of it. Want to hear what your worth sounds like when it's explained to people who don't understand it? She played the recording. Her voice was clear and confident. You want to know what I deserve? I deserve a partner who pays every single bill without complaint. I deserve someone who handles every repair, every maintenance issue, every financial decision so I can focus on my interests. I deserve a man who plans our vacations, remembers every important date, and never makes me worry about money. I deserve someone who gets up early to make me breakfast and stays up late to make sure the house is secure. And guess what? That's exactly what I have. Rebecca's voice came through the speaker. But what about emotional support? What about feeling valued? You mean like when he drove me to the hospital at 3 o'clock a.m., when I had food poisoning and stayed awake all night to make sure I was okay? Or when he spent his entire weekend converting the spare room into my office space? Or when he researched contractors for a month to find the right person to remodel our bathroom exactly how I wanted it? Amanda's voice. But you said you felt taken for granted. I felt taken for granted because I was taking him for granted. I was so focused on what I thought I wasn't getting that I completely ignored what I was getting. And what I was getting was a man who structured his entire life around making mine easier. The recording continued with them trying to convince her she was settling, and her methodically destroying every argument with specific examples of my contributions versus theirs. She turned off the recording. Want to know the best part? What's that? When I finished explaining what you actually do for our relationship, Rebecca asked what you get in return. So I told her, a wife who appreciates what she has instead of complaining about what she lacks. A partner who supports your decisions instead of undermining them to her friends. A woman who handles her own emotional regulation instead of expecting you to manage her insecurities. How did they respond to that? Rebecca said that sounded like an unequal exchange. So I asked her what her boyfriend contributes to her life. I laughed. I'm guessing that didn't go well. She couldn't list a single thing beyond emotional support and companionship. Meanwhile, I had just spent 20 minutes detailing your practical contributions to our daily life. And Amanda? Amanda said I was being too transactional about love. So I pointed out that her transactional approach was expecting maximum emotional investment from partners who contribute minimum practical value. She leaned back against the couch. I realized something tonight. They're not my friends. They're spectators who were entertained by my relationship drama. The moment I stopped providing drama, they tried to create more. What did you tell them? I told them exactly what they deserved, which was to find friends who actually want them to be happy instead of friends who enable their complaints and validate their bad decisions. And then I left, but not before I thanked them. For what? For showing me the difference between people who support your growth and people who support your grievances. For helping me realize that the only opinion that matters in our marriage is yours and mine, and for demonstrating what it looks like when people don't know their actual worth. She picked up her phone and showed me her final Instagram post. Final update. I know my worth now. My worth is measured by what I contribute, not what I demand. My value comes from what I give, not what I expect. And my husband's worth? Immeasurable. Some queens rule kingdoms. Smart women appreciate the kings who built them. The post already had dozens of likes and comments, but this time they were different. Supportive, encouraging from people who actually wanted our marriage to succeed. So, I said, putting my arm around her. Do you know what you deserve now? She smiled. I deserve exactly what I have, a man who showed me my real worth by demonstrating his own. And what's that worth? Everything. My marriage, my respect, and my commitment to never again confuse what I want with what I've earned. I kissed the top of her head. Now that's a queen who truly knows her worth. And that's a king who never had to demand his space because he created it through his actions. 6 months later, Rebecca and Amanda were both single. Some people never learn what they're actually worth until they've lost everything that had real value. My wife learned the difference between demanding worth and demonstrating it. And I learned that sometimes the best way to show someone what they deserve is to give them exactly what they ask for.